Welcome to the fruit and vegetable assignment. In this assignment, you will learn to draw a fruit or a vegetable using a photo as a reference. You can later use this technique to draw really anything that you can find a photo reference for. We're going to be creating a detailed illustration of a piece of fruit or your favorite vegetable. Choose whatever item you want to draw. And we're going to use basic shapes and change them to fit the outlines based in the photo. We're not going to use strokes, outlines, or gradients, or automatic image tracing. We're going to manually recreate this as a vector illustration. So the first thing I want you to do is to source an image. So do a Google image search, or I did a DuckDuckGo search, an image search for cherry, and then I looked at what I found. And what I'm looking for is something that has a lot of detail, is a nice big image, and has a white background. I don't want to do a whole bunch of cherries. I want to do something simple, fairly simple, but I want to see the outline clearly and I want to see the colors in it very clearly. So I've picked this as the reference that I'm going to use. And then I'm going to click on View File. Sometimes you can download, sometimes you can do a screenshot, do something to get this image onto your computer. I'm going to click View File right here. And now I'm going to save that file on my computer. So I'm going to go to File, Save Page As, because I can see that it's a JPEG. So it's going to save it as Cherry Numbers JPEG. I'm going to save it in my Downloads folder. So I click Save. I already did it once. I'm going to click Replace. But it's in my Downloads folder. I know where it is. All right, so now I'm going to move over to Adobe Illustrator, and I'm going to bring that photo in so that I can use it for a reference. So here's Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to go to File, choose New, and then I just want to have a letter-sized piece of virtual paper on my screen. So if you don't have letter in your recent items, you can click on Print, and then letter is right here. Right now, the units of measure are points, but it doesn't really matter. We're not going to be measuring in this assignment, so I'm not even going to change it to inches, but I am going to change it to landscape orientation, so the long way, this way, and then I'm going to click Create. So here's my desktop, here's my document. This is where I'm going to be placing my photos and drawing my illustration. I want to make sure that I'm in the Essentials workspace. Remember that you can go to different workspaces here in the top right corner. I've gone to Essentials, and then I'm going to click Reset Essentials so that everything goes back to where it's supposed to be. So Reset Essentials, and now I see what the Essentials desktop looks like. I've got my toolbar on the left, and I've got my Properties panel over here, and I'm ready to place that image on my screen. So to place, I go to File, and then Place. That's the same command that does it in InDesign as well. So I'm going to click Place, and then I'm going to find the image that I downloaded. I know where I put it. It was in Downloads. So here's my cherry image, and I'm going to click Place. And now it's loaded in my cursor. It's not placed on the page yet, but I get to decide where to put it and decide how large it's going to be. So I'm going to put it on the left side of the page, about like that, because I want to have room to put 2 reference pictures on this page, and you'll see why in a minute. So I've placed my cherry on the page. We're going to use layers in this assignment, and layers can have many things on a single layer, but it's an easier way to organize what you want to stack on top of other things within Illustrator. So the Layers panel is over here. There's some tabs underneath the Properties panel. Layers should be the second one that you see. So I'm going to click on this panel, and right now it says Layer 1, and it's showing me a tiny representation of the cherry that I've got placed on there. So in step 2 in the announcement that you're reading on D2L, it says name the layer guide layer. So I'm going to go over here and see if we can look at this closer. And if you click on the name of the layer, if you double click on the name, it should become highlighted and you can name that layer. So I'm going to call it guide layer because that's what it's going to be for us. And I'm going to click return. And now I've got a single layer on there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that reference photo to a new layer and use that for another reference. So we're going to be drawing over the version on the left, and we're going to be using the version on the right for sort of a reservoir of colors and a color reference as we fill in pieces of this cherry. So first thing I'm going to do is copy this. It's selected. If you click on it, this is the selected state, and if you click on the pasteboard behind it, it's deselected. So I'm going to click on it and select it, and then I'm going to copy it. So copy, I could do edit copy from the menu like that. I can also do Command C, that's the shortcut for copy. So I'm going to copy it. Now it's on my clipboard, which is sort of a virtual holding place until I paste it. So I've got it, and I'm going to paste it. And I want to paste it onto a new layer. So if you look at the bottom of this layers palette, you can see this button right here. That is the new layer button. So add a layer. So I'm going to click that, and looking up at the top of my panel, I can see that layer 2 has been added above my guide layer. So now I'm going to click Command V or edit paste, and I've got my second copy of the cherry there. So this one, I want to have it in line horizontally with the other one. You can see how a line appears when I'm centered on horizontally on the other one. The smart guides of Illustrator kind of help you to do that. I'm just going to place this one over here, sort of at the same level. It's the same, exactly the same size as the other one. It's just placed over here. And we're going to call this the colors layer. So this item is highlighted in blue, it's on the guide layer, and this item is highlighted in red, and it's on layer 2 right now. We're going to rename that layer. So let's look up here and click on the layer, double click on the name, and we're going to call this colors layer, and press return. So we've got guide layer and colors layer. So the colors layer, I want you to just lock that layer. So this column right here next to the eyeball toggles whether it's locked or not. And when it's locked, it means that you can't accidentally move it around, you can't accidentally delete it. It's locked in place so that it's sort of safe for you to draw over without worrying about not messing it up. But we're going to do something to our guide layer. So the guide layer, we're going to double click on it. Double clicking on the name lets you just edit the name, but if you double click on the bar next to it, you'll open up a little dialog box that's all about that layer. So I'm double clicking sort of over here on the bar, and I get my dialog box. And I've already named it. It says it's guide layer, but we really need to do something to it to make it an actual guide layer. So we're going to click template, and what that's done is it's locked it, it shows it, but it dims the image to 50% so that we can draw over it, and it's going to be what we use to draw the boundaries of our color areas. So I'm going to click OK, and you can see that the symbol in the layers palette has changed for this one. It automatically locked it, and it also changed its visibility icon from the eyeball to this picture frame, and that's just another visual cue that this is a guide layer. So my guide layer is at 50% opacity, my colors layer is at full opacity, we can see it. Now we're ready to create a layer to draw on. So we're going to create another layer. I'm going to select the colors layer so that the new layer, every time you create a new layer, it'll create the layer on top of the layer that's selected. So I want to make sure my third layer is on top of everything else. So my colors layer is selected. I'm going to click the new layer button one more time. And now I've got a layer 3 sitting there at the top of my layer stack. And I could name this drawing if I wanted to. I think I'll do that just to remind myself what I'm doing on this layer. And this layer is unlocked because I definitely want to be able to draw on this layer. All right, so we are ready to get started. When you start drawing something using this technique, you want to create kind of the large shapes first and then go into the smaller shapes and the highlights. We're not using any gradients, we're not using any outlines, so you're not going to see me using a black stroke or an outline or trying to draw the edges of this thing. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put this together from shapes. So the first kind of basic shape that I see is a circle for this cherry. So looking over at the toolbar, circle or ellipse is one of the tools that you can use. And when you see the toolbar and you see the little tiny triangle in the bottom right hand corner, that means there's other tools below it. So if I click and hold on the rectangle tool, I can find the ellipse tool. And that's the major tool I'm going to be using for this drawing. So I've clicked on the ellipse tool and now I can draw ellipses. If I look at my colors in the toolbar right here, down in the bottom, I can see that the fill is white and the stroke is black. So just testing out drawing a little ellipse, I've got a white ellipse and I'm going to use the select tool to move it. You can see that it's filled with white and it's got a black stroke around it. And you can see that it's highlighted in green. That's because it's on my third layer and that happens to be the highlight color for that layer. All right, so I would like to use this as my base cherry shape. So I'm going to use the handles to kind of make it fit my cherry. And I know that I don't want it to be black and white. So how can I sample a color and use that color in my drawing? That's why we have both of these on here. So I'm selecting the shape, and now I'm going to use the eyedropper tool right here. If I click on the eyedropper tool and then go over to my cherry and click various areas, you can see when I click the highlight, it's a pink, lighter pink color. When I click on the bottom of the cherry, it's a darker red color. So I'm going to pick one of these colors to be the very basic first layer of my cherry. I think a medium red might be good to go with, because then I can put in some shadows and some highlights later. But I'm going to choose this medium red to start with. So I've done that. I've selected it and then sampled a color. And now I'm going to go to the direct select tool right here. Remember that with the direct select tool, you can select anchor points individually. When you worked on your personal logo, you probably did this, selecting individual anchor points and moving them around. So we're going to do that to make this shape even more match the cherry. So you can pull the handles around. That bulged my cherry out a little bit more there. But you can also add anchor points, and that is one of the other main things we're going to learn from this assignment as we work on it. Adding anchor points is something that you can do with the pen tool. So I'm going to click on the pen tool, and the thing to watch for is when you're on a path, it will let you know. It'll give you this little word path, and it'll give you a plus sign. So that lets you know that when you're hovered over the path and you see that plus sign, if you click, you can add another anchor point. So I'm going to add an anchor point here, and you can see it's been added. I'm going to add an anchor point, add an anchor point. This is how I get more detail into my outline. I can have more anchor points to make the shape conform more to what I'm trying to make. So now that I've added some anchor points, I'm going to go back to direct select and move these carefully around to better match what my cherry shape is. You can use the magnifying glass tool to zoom in real close if you want. And then another tool that I really like for doing this kind of work is going to view outlines and back again. So if I go to view and click on outline, Command Y is the keyboard shortcut for that. If I view outline, then I can see a very fine outline of the shape that I'm drawing, and I can also see my guide layer behind there. What I cannot see in this view is I cannot see my colors reference. So that's why we had to turn that into a guide layer, because only guide layers are the only photographic layers that are visible while you are in the outlines mode. So I needed to still be able to see this behind my outlines. And so that's why I needed to turn that into a guide layer. So now I'm ready to take my direct selection tool again and select the path, select the anchor point. Now I can move things very precisely and capture the real outline of whatever my fruit is here.